Welcome, Golf Weekly friends. Okay, let me share the menu with you. Okay, so four appetizers: peach and ricotta flatbread with balsamic hot honey and basil, a rock shrimp tempura with a creamy spicy sauce, bacon wrapped dates with goat cheese and almonds, of course, and interesting, grilled elk sliders with caramelized onion jam, roasted garlic aioli, and then a first course of either. Oh, sorry. Yellowfin tuna is the first course, and then the main course of Wagyu filet mignon or seared salmon, and then sticky toffee pudding for dessert. That, as you probably know, is, of course, Rory McIlroy's Masters menu. Here to dissect it are two noted foodies, David McIntyre
Okay.
and Gary Murphy.
Hey, lads.
Elk.
Gentlemen,
He was eating a lot of elk, he said.
Never even seen
um,
elk on a menu, let alone
Well,
had
it's
it.
just venison, isn't it? It's just a type of venison, I guess.
But is it like an adult meat?
No, it's a big deer, isn't it? An
Oh,
elk
I
is a big.
understand that, but like venison obviously is or well, I'm mixing that up with veal, haven't I?
You are.
Yes.
yeah.
So let's
All
go.
in all, it's an interesting menu and it's a meal I'd love to sit down and have served to me. I'm not sure it's the most memorable Masters Champions dinner menus of all time, but I think those who go with a hunger on them are going to be treated very well.
Um, Gary, you've had some fine meals in your time, so I have to say I'm with Dave. This is a meal I'd like.
I just like to be at that table, or like to
Well,
be in that dining room for and have a green jacket on me,
yeah, no,
to be
true.
brutally honest.
So
It
just
does
to,
sound it's more Swiss than an Ulster fry, that's for sure, no.
that's for sure. Well, interestingly, you should say that because the yellowfin tuna carpaccio, which is the first course, is a dish from his favorite restaurant in New York City, Le Bernardin. But as he said himself, it's a really simple dish, but every time we go to that restaurant, that's the one thing I have to have. Um, he likes the tuna carpaccio. I thought it was interesting. He said he'd been eating a ton of elk in the lead up to last year's Masters to inspire him. And then the what's the one? The dates, the Rocksham Tour peach and ricotta flatbread. That's thanks to his mum. Um, he said, thanks to Rosie for that one, who made it often during his childhood. Jesus, like there's a lad who grew up eating some fancy food.
It's no wonder they were working three jobs with an evening menu like that, to be honest.
Um, yeah.
I've just jumped into their menu. The set menu, which includes the carpaccio for four courses, is $218 per person.
I mean, in New York, that's nothing. That's mid-range.
Well, look, if you're, as I say, if you're looking at the menu to check the prices, you're probably not the right person to be dining there.
Yeah. No, 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 it's for sure. Interestingly enough, touches of Irish are in the Irish Champ. That is the side for either the Wagyu filet mignon or the seared salmon. And then he went for what he thinks is a crowd pleaser, sticky toffee pudding. Yes. Which was invented, I'm going to let you know, because my wife is from Cumbria, at the Sharrow Bay Hotel on Ullswater in Cumbria. Sticky toffee pudding. That's where it's from.
Wow.
Good knowledge.
I
Yeah.
don't The winter nights must fly by, Fionn.
It's harder to make because it is very, very sweet.
It is.
But
I thankfully don't have a sweet tooth, or I probably wouldn't be in frame here, but I would be more of a starter in a restaurant than I'm not into desserts.
yeah, I have to say I'm the same as you. And the older I get, the less sweet my tooth is. Whereas when I was younger, I used to take four sugars in coffee.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I had a very sweet tooth when I was young, but not so much these days. And I think just, yeah, I much prefer savory now to sweet.
I think
What
we
would be
should
your
move
main
on,
course
John, from the whole menu thing.
if you were
Sorry,
defending Masters champion?
what? Sorry, if I was defending Master Champion, what I would
Yeah,
have?
you're just one dish each, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, sushi for me. Um, Sushi. Yeah.
Sushi,
Mackerel sushi is my favorite sushi in the world.
seafood linguine, some kind of that'd be my main dish.
Okay.
Some
Dave?
Cote de Buff, I think.
What?
Some Cote de Buff.
Good to
Oh,
both.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfectly cooked. And
Yeah.
some very
Question:
delicately,
What's perfectly cooked, Dave?
Medium rare.
yeah, medium rare towards medium with some hand cut fries on the side and some array of sauces for my fellow Masters champions to delve into. And then I would ensure that there is Guinness on tap there as well, so
Okay.
that everyone can have a couple of pints.
I'm with any well-cooked steak, I'm averse to any sauce. The only thing I want on a steak is salt. That's it.
Yeah, sometimes if it's a good enough steak, the flavor should take care of itself. I agree.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about everybody else in the room, Fionn.
True, a little mushroom sauce or a little pepper sauce on the side. I'll tell you, I remember I lived in Paris for 3 years in the 90s, and an English friend of mine, John Hedigan, came to visit, and we went out to just an ordinary restaurant. And the story illustrates two stereotypes. So John asked for steak, and he wanted it well done. Like he didn't want to see any red in his meat. So they brought him a steak that was barely alive, because in France, the idea of cooking a steak beyond medium is a crime against food. So John cut into it and went, "Here, I'm sending this back." And I was like, "John, listen, I don't think they're going to cook it anymore." And so he called the waiter over and very politely said to him, he goes, "Listen, this isn't cooked nearly well enough. I want it cooked well done." So the waiter reluctantly took it back, came back, and it was slightly less red than the original one. John complained again. The waiter said, "Oh, monsieur," like this. Anyway, so needless to say, then a manager comes over and he goes, "Sir, if you are not happy with the way we serve our food, perhaps you would like to eat in another restaurant."
Wow.
I know. And this wasn't a fancy French restaurant at all. It was just an ordinary steak place in Paris. It was very
See,
funny.
I don't agree with that, and I'm a bit of a stake in the stone man. But why would you go to a restaurant to cook your own food? You know, you're
Well, yeah.
going somewhere to you're the customer. It's your choice.
And I think that's John obviously was like John was apoplectic, and I totally understood him. But I guess because I'd been living in France for a little while, so you get kind of used to the French stickiness on things, and you're just like, look, it is what it is, and just now it just so happens I love rare steak, so I'm never troubled by it. But if you like your meat to be really, really well cooked, my advice would be don't go to France. Anyway, right, let's move on. The Masters menu. I have to say, fair play, although he did say he was a bit nervous about having to make a speech, which surprises me because, there's a man who's very comfortable speaking in front of a crowd, I would imagine. Old Roars.
Yeah, I would have.
Well, it should be.
I wouldn't have thought it would have been an issue at all. Like, how long does the speech tend to be or have to be? Maybe there's no hard and fast rules on it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
question is, are you nervous of your speech, or are you nervous of the audience listening to your speech?
Yeah, maybe a combination of the two.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's Masters champions. It really is the kind of exalted few of golf.
It's like doing a Q&A. If you're the one answering the questions, it depends who you're asking the questions to sometimes. But if you just treat everybody like, because I did a Q&A at the Irish Open down in Lahinch with Peter Allis, which in a sense can be a bit daunting, but he was just such a wonderful person to hang out with. It wasn't, but I think maybe it's more his audience than the actual speech.
Yeah, fair
Because
enough.
there's a few decent golfers in that room, to be fair.
Who would you like to sit between, Fionn?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think I'd like to sit next to Mickelson, only because, although was it last year that he was very quiet, but I'd say Mickelson has unbelievable stories. Um, I mean, the obvious one is you want to say is Tiger because, it's Tiger.
He's
But
probably not going to say much to you, though, is he?
that's what I mean. Yeah, he wouldn't say much. Whereas I'd
He
say
wouldn't want to be. He's the guy sitting beside at the wedding that you're going, oh Jesus, can't wait till the
I
dinner's
don't want
up
to sit next to
move
Angel
somewhere else.
Cabrera.
Is he allowed go? Is he going to be there?
Yeah, why wouldn't he? I mean, he's done his time, like whatever. But and I don't know that I particularly enjoy sitting next to Adam Scott because he's so polite and he come across as like so nice. I'm just running through the Danny Willett. Danny Willett could be funny, you know. I'm just saying. I'm trying to think of someone who'd be funny.
Yeah,
Mickelson. I think Mickelson would be amazing. I think Mickelson would have, if Mickelson's in good form, I think he would tell a lot of funny stories.
he would.
Tiger and Jack.
You'd have to take
Tiger
them
and
with
Jack.
a salt. Tiger and Jack, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And just ask who's the greatest. That'd get the conversation started, wouldn't it?
yeah.
Crenshaw and
Or
couples for me.
who's greater, rather.
Who?
Crenshaw and couples.
See, sorry, they're good choices. I mean, Tiger and Jack are the obvious ones because they are Masters history. But Crenshaw and Couples, yeah, that's very good. That's
Imagine
a
the
nice
chat you'd have with them.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Well, maybe Matt Fitzpatrick will be there next year, given his antics at Valspar. So the Copperhead course at Innisbrook, so Larry Packard, it is kind of an idiosyncratic course, isn't it, Gary? Definitely it doesn't necessarily reward one style play or another. Matt Fitzpatrick, Jesus, well, I'm ranked number 1 strokes gained tee to green, number 1 scrambling. Like, given he had a second last week, Matt Fitzpatrick's game is sharpening up quite nicely for the stroll down Magnolia Lane.
It certainly is, and he's 2 weeks off. He had a bogey-free weekend. I have played that golf course. It's exceptionally difficult. I think I turned on the TV. I don't know what stage it was on Thursday, and Sunjay Im was 9 under par, and it was devastating, to be fair, because I thought, I know the course record's 10 under, which I literally couldn't believe when because I played it about 2 weeks after the tournament about 3 years ago, and it's a difficult game of golf. It's extremely tricky out of the rough, and the fairways are difficult to hit. And even the last hole is only a drive and a wedge up the hill, and that was the first time in 12 tries that Fitzpatrick had birdied the hole. So it's a super, super golf course that, when you see Snedeker, who's in the autumn of his career, just a wily old character, can navigate his way around there. Obviously, he came a little unstuck on Sunday, but it's a superb test of golf. And Fitzpatrick, as he showed in Dubai at the end of last year, has turned into a fantastic closer. Didn't do anything wrong the previous week, really, in Sawgrass. He's got a decent enough record at Augusta, but he's armed now with a lot of confidence going in there, and it was a huge win for him. 2 under the last 4 holes, notoriously difficult finish, and he could have played them in 4 under, really.
Dave, golfing neutrals, with all respect to David Lipsky, will be breathed a sigh of relief that he didn't birdie the last to force a playoff.
Yeah, look, no slight on poor David Lipsky, but I was delighted for Matt Fitzpatrick, particularly given how things finished at Sawgrass last week. For him to be able to come back to what is obviously a far lesser tournament, but to be able to keep his play going, like he didn't collapse like, say, Shane Lowry did a few weeks ago, so he wasn't bringing an awful lot of scar tissue into his next outing following the Players' Championship. So the circumstances are a lot different, but it would have been a big disappointment for him. He's obviously a major champion and a serial Ryder Cup star, but the Players' Championship would have been the second biggest victory of his career, and for it to slip through his fingers on the last would have been hugely disappointing. So for him to be able to go straight into his next event, a much lesser event, fewer crowds, much lower prestige, and to be able to continue his form and go bogey free through the weekend on a really difficult golf course, like 11 under par, is not what you generally see anymore on an irregular PGA Tour event. So it's obviously an eccentric enough golf course where mistakes are riddled throughout the place if you don't keep your concentration at all times. And for him to go bogey free on Saturday and Sunday, And to hold that big putt on 18 as well, which is another big moment for him. Fair play to him. He's a really likable character. I was delighted to see him win. It's his first victory on tour in a few years, and he is tracking nicely for Augusta, where I'd be certainly convinced that he's capable of winning.
Yeah, and what a contrast to last year. I mean, missed the cut of the players last year. He changed his caddy. He then missed the cut of Valero. Kind of didn't particularly play brilliantly around Augusta, and he's now what? He's sixth in the world. Finished second, as we
I
said.
think he's
of the
is he
players.
higher?
No, I think is he higher than sixth? Um, and obviously won the DP World Tour Championship at the end of last season. So it's just felt like, even though this time last year Fitzpatrick was in the doldrums, the latter half of his season showed promise and then delivered. And then this year, like, I mean, ultimately everything we're discussing now in golf is in the shadow of Augusta in 3 weeks' time. 2 weeks? Is it 2 or 3?
3 weeks, I think.
3 weeks' time. Sorry, yeah. So the 9th of April is the Thursday, day after my birthday. So that's how I know it this year. But Fitzpatrick now puts himself into a conversation. Oh, we've lost Gary, I'm afraid. Doesn't he, Dave?
Yeah, definitely. Like, he's got the temperament. I'm not sure he'll make enough birdies, and obviously we don't really know from this juncture how the course is going to play. We haven't really got a feel for what the weather conditions are going to be like. Will it be firm? I think the firmer and the faster, the better for him, um, because he's not the longest player in the world, obviously, although he has improved his ball speed and his length in the last 5 or 6 years. He's
Oh yeah.
transformed really, but um,
Have you seen some of his workout stuff
yeah.
that he does
Oh,
for?
he's as dedicated a player
Oh
as
yeah.
there is in the game. And obviously, for those people who would have been able to watch more than a couple of episodes of Full Swing, they would have seen in
Did
season
you
one.
did you not enjoy that?
Actually enjoyed the episode of Matt Fitzpatrick where you got an insight. Gary's back with us, an insight into how the amount of time that he spends off the golf course on compiling the data around his shots, and
Mm.
he can go immediately call up a shot that he would have hit into a certain hole a decade ago and tell you exactly how far he hit it and what he had in and how close to the pin he hit it. But um, I was so taken by his comments after the round about slow play.
Go on,
It was
discuss.
just fair play to him, because golfers are too nice these days. Now, he's a little bit of an exception to the rule in that it's not the first time that he's called out slow play in the past, or certainly discussed the issue around slow play. And he was careful as well. He didn't actually name his playing partner, didn't list him by name, but he actually made a complaint to the match referee about the amount of time that it was taking his playing partner, AJ Ewart, to um, hit his shots. And they had fallen more than a hole behind. Now, he had a couple of real issues on a couple of holes where he ran up an 8 on two different occasions, the Canadian, but he uh, it's something that is never going to be fixed, and it's something that Matt Fitzpatrick himself has acknowledged is never going to be fixed.
Mm.
But I'm still delighted that he actually went and called it out, because it's just such a blight on the game, and until more players start doing it, nothing is ever going to be done about it. Sorry,
I
I've
think
also misnamed
the
the guy. It wasn't AJ Ewart. It was the Belgian Adrian Dumont de Chassard that he was playing with, who had a really
Yeah.
tough day and finished with a round of 74. But I want to see more golfers going up to the match referee and lodging a formal complaint about their playing partner when they think they're being too slow.
It was interesting because obviously, as we gear up for the Masters, the algorithm is serving me a lot of Masters content. And the most recent one is the 1979 Masters that Fuzzy Zeller won as a rookie. And I can't remember who else was in his three ball, but like the one outstanding feature of it is they all take about 4 seconds to hit the ball. They literally look at the shot, one little waggle, bang. And it's just like, and move on. And oddly enough, I mean, they must have yardage books, but they're not spending ages looking in the yardage book.
Maybe they're just ready to play.
Well, or maybe
Maybe
the
it's like
TV
that basic,
cameras. I don't
that
know.
obvious.
I don't know. But obviously, the game has slowed down dramatically
But
over the years.
Fitzpatrick's biggest issue, Fionn, was that his playing partner was not ready to play.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
inexcusable. By the time your playing partner has hit a shot, you should already have your club in your hand. You've got your yardage. You know what you want to do with the ball, and you begin your pre-shot routine, and off you go. And not being ready to play is just not good enough.
So, Gary, I'd agree
But the,
entirely with Dave insofar as like at my shitty level of golf, I'm good at being ready to play. So when it's my turn, I've I've gunned the yardage. I know the club I'm going to play. Blah blah blah. I know how I'm going to miss hit the shot, and I just do it. Tell me why pros don't do more of that. What is there? Is there a whole other thing about like, oh, getting into a zone, or I don't know, whatever, getting into a mental space?
well, it is because you've got the two guys Dave mentioned there. First and foremost, they're two rookies.
Yeah.
There was a thing years ago on the European Tour, and when I first got my card, or when I got my card in the Canadian Tour, the following day you had to attend a meeting, and it was an 8-hour meeting, which was fantastic. Everything was spelt out, the do's and don'ts, and pace of play was one of the things. And it's something that's not done anymore. But when you have two rookies that are, very slow, and if you look at Fitzpatrick on the last 4 greens, his routine was literally the same on every putt, which is what you want to do. He wasn't getting in his own way. I think Lipsky took a bit longer on 17 and left the putt short because obviously he's too line conscious and the nerves show up on speed. I don't know why the TV companies don't, like the TV companies are paying the bill essentially. And for a broadcast to run over more often than not costs extra money. There should be, listen, these lads should be getting around in 3.5 hours, and that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 hours on a very difficult golf course, but there has to be, they tried it in Europe with that shot clock and stuff, but there's such an arrangement around all these players now. They've got a shrink, they've got a physical coach, they've got a golf coach. There's a lot going into pre-shots, and you can't do anything until you're ready to do it. And and it's as easy to train a fast routine as a slow routine. I had a putting lesson years ago from David Frost, who was one of the greatest putters of all time. And his motto was, if you're going to miss it quick. It's far better to play a little more instinctive, but that doesn't seem to be and even on the LPGA, it's worse on the LPGA tour. The women are notoriously slower. So it's a cancer in the game. There's no denying it.
Okay. And just as a counterpoint, do you think that Matt Fitzpatrick, though correct in being frustrated with the slow play of his partners, feels more emboldened to call out slow play because they're rookies? And would he have done the same thing had he been paired with Patrick Cantlay or Kevin Na or JB Holmes or even my beloved Jordan Spieth, who is become quite slow?
We don't know, do we?
It's a rhetorical question. I don't think he would.
Well, I think in this situation,
Well, I think he would.
he's
He has in
trying
the
to win the
past.
tournament, and his routine was being severely hampered by his playing partner. What he was in the zone, his playing partner was struggling, and from Matt Fitzpatrick said there was a 4-hole stint in the middle of the round where he felt his entire rhythm had been upended because he just wasn't able to stick to any routine because things were taking so long. At one point, he had walked up to the green, hit his putt, and holed out before his playing partner had hit his approach shot. Now, the other issue is a lot of these players, and it's not just golf, it's probably across the world and across a whole variety of sports, they don't have any shame.
No.
If that happened to me in a golf course, I'd be absolutely mortified.
Well, in fairness, you are one of the quickest players I've ever played with.
But players like that nowadays, they probably just don't care. They're like, well, F him. If that's his problem, I'm going to stick to my routine as slow as it is. But look, they'll never police it properly. There has been one penalty shot handed out since 1995.
That's your man, the young Chinese player, wasn't it, at the Masters?
Well, in a regular tour
Yeah.
event.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
It was in New Orleans in 2017. Yeah, they did pick on a 14-year-old Chinese kid.
Like,
Speaking of like Matt Fitzpatrick maybe having to go at a rookie, the Masters found it very easy to have a
sorry,
go at a teenage foreigner. But
let's not, I don't want to be, there's no equivocation here. Matt Fitzpatrick is correct. I absolutely agree with him. I think it's the scourge of the game. And I would love to see a shot clock introduced to the PGA Tour, but because it's a player-owned tour, they're just going to say no. But so, given the frustrating realities, then it's incumbent on Matt Fitzpatrick. I'm sorry, I don't want to suggest for a second that he doesn't already know this, but that clearly Matt Fitzpatrick must have in his mental locker routines that he can engage with when he's playing, say, with Patrick Cantlay, for instance, who, to my mind, is I don't want to accuse anyone of gamesmanship, but like engages in a type of psychological warfare that where he ends up the winner. You know what I mean? It's just like I'd imagine that there are players like if you're in the final grouping and like your opponent likes to play fast, surely there are loads of smart players who will go, I'm going to play a little slowly and try and get him out of rhythm. It's a bit like it's the old Lee Trevino playing with Jack Nicklaus. Jack Nicklaus didn't like to talk. Lee Trevino knew that and would talk to him the entire round. I'm just saying that level of psychological gamesmanship is as old as golf itself.
Well, it is, and there's a lot of guys do it, but it's unfair on the player to have to police it. So
Yeah,
maybe coming up to the first major of the year, I know Augusta are pretty good at making their own rules up.
yeah,
But it is very annoying, and players do purposely slow down if they're playing with a faster player if they think that it might bother them. But it's not up. It's up to the referee to go, listen, mate, shot penalties are the only way to do it nowadays because a 5 or 10 grand fine to these guys is irrelevant.
absolutely.
And
I agree. It should be a shot penalty.
Maybe the new guy on the PGA Tour might have an appetite to take it on because it's becoming harder and harder for TV producers to whiz around when guys are taking so long. And that's why you see guys over a shot and then they'll cut to somebody else because they just take so long. And then they know certain players and they literally won't go to them until they're almost over the ball. And if you're following or listening to the group and the on-courser is there, you're not really getting the live feedback because, it's too close to the hit for the commentator to set up the shot. So it affects lots of things. But most importantly, it affects the players that are the ones within the rules because technically they're breaking the rules every time they do it.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Can you penalize an individual or is it the group that's put on the clock initially?
The group goes on the clock, but the problem with it is it just happens. Like I wasn't a slow player, but if you go on the clock, you just speed up. It really does affect your rhythm. And the problem then is the guy who's creating the slowness, he speeds up. And then you're getting agitated because he's now playing the way he should have been playing in the first place, and we wouldn't be in this situation. And that causes friction. And
were you put on the clock, Gary, ever in a tournament?
I actually got fined for slow play in Munich I can't remember the year. I got a bad time on the 13th hole in Wentworth, and I refuted it because it was a perfect number with the perfect club. There was no reason for me to be slow. And then the guy followed us for 4 holes, and we walked up onto the 16th green in Wentworth, and the guys were on the 17th tee, so we weren't even out of position. But because I got a bad time, and then I played the 11th hole in Munich, and Nick Doherty was digging a trench down the right-hand side in the trees, taking forever. And I took 50 seconds on a putt, and I was last to putt. And I got a bad time, and because I got 2 bad times in the one season, I got fined £4,000. And I didn't think I was a slow player. But because of that situation, I completely went and changed my routine and then became a kind of a fast player. But it was more, listen, I still I still think I was in the right and I was unfairly treated. But it's like when you go visit someone in prison, no one's guilty in there. But anyway,
Do you think that
it
your playing partners or that your fellow tour professionals, while you were out there on the European tour, would have seen you as being one of the slower players on tour?
no, not at all. But the problem that day on 11 in Munich, Nick Doherty was making a double. I was putting for birdie. So by the letter of the law, I was last to go. And I obviously wasn't ready to go when I was supposed to go. And that's why it took 5 seconds longer than I was supposed to take. And Andy McPhee was the referee who was notorious. And I got nailed. But we'd probably taken 15 minutes to play the hole because one of the other guys was in trouble on the hole. And there's a little bit of common, there's common sense on certain things, but it certainly did frame it for me that I need to change my ways, even though I didn't think I was a slow player. But common sense should have prevailed in that one. And the incident on 13 in Wentworth, there's no way that I had taken too much time to hit it. Like it was a 165 7-iron. Like there was no wind. You just couldn't take too long over that shot. Anyway, I had to pay the $4,000 and that was it.
Jesus.
And the problem then is so I have this in the back of my head and and then you're out with slow players who are playing really slow and then you go on the clock. And then I remember it happened in Sweden one day. I was playing with Simon Wakefield, who was about as quick as January and February just gone. And we go on the clock and then he starts running up the fairway and I just start screaming at him. What are you doing? Like, and saying to the ref, like, he hasn't been playing like this, and so it does cause a lot of, and I'm sure Fitzpatrick was going off his head. And probably it happened actually. I played in South Africa one year and there was a guy, it was his first tournament. No, not in South Africa. It was in New Zealand. It was his first event. And he was so slow. He literally had no concept of a routine to the golf shot. He'd just come off. He had played a few events on the Challenge Tour and then got his card at tour school. So he literally had no training for the environment that he was going into. And I didn't say anything to him. And I went over to the rules official afterwards and I said, listen, this kid's after coming on tour. He's taken a minute and a half to hit shots. He just doesn't know. Can you take him onto the range and go, this is what's expected of you? And that happened. And, the young lad understood but it's not up to the inmates to run the asylum. So
No.
I do think that the powers that be need to step up again, because there was a thing on this a couple of years ago, it's a nightmare because half the time now the commentary is so bad and they're filling air because someone has taken so long and you're listening to a load of nonsense half the time on top of it. So, there's a switch off mode, I think, for the viewer too, as well as commentators are looking at it too, going out of their minds going, we kind of have to fill the air talking with nonsense here. We've set up the shot. We've, said what is to be said. So it does stream down through all facets of the broadcast, and I think it's not making the product any better than what it should. Even if you look, I didn't see the LIV Golf at the weekend, but I watched the highlights on YouTube, and then I went back to watching the American Golf last night. And the difference in the vibe of the commentary, like it was almost serene and peaceful listening to the PGA Tour broadcast after listening to the hype of the LIV broadcast. So I think for everyone, not just for the players, I think for everyone, it would be a far better product if everybody played like Matt Fitzpatrick.
Mm. Well, let's talk about LIV because I watched it a good bit. So Bryson DeChambeau beats John Ram in the first hole of sudden death. He won it with, well, interestingly enough, it was a pretty damn good 285-yard 3-wood from a shitty lie. Well, actually, no, a perfect lie in kind of muddy ground. And he hit it to 12 feet. And John Ram, who was on the fairway and had also gotten relief from casual water, couldn't clear the bunker. And yeah, so even though Bryson didn't make the eagle putt, didn't have to make birdie to win by a stroke. It was, I thought, with all respect to Matt Fitzpatrick and the Copperhead course, I thought this was exciting to me. I really enjoyed this a lot. And that is even allowing Gary for a slight kind of irked sense that like stop amping it up. Like they called Bryson's
Yeah,
shot like it was like the greatest shot ever hit. And it wasn't. It was a great 3-wood. He had a perfect lie, but like it felt like they have to maybe it's the insecurity of a young product that they have to constantly tell you how amazing it all is. But it
yeah.
was like I still really, really enjoyed it. Other note that I had, I just want to ask you about DeChambeau in a second. So it's a second win back to back. I really like the addition of Ollie Wilson to the LIV team. I think he's really good. I find David Feherty irksome now. He's almost like my friend and I we were talking about this morning. He's become a caricature of himself.
Yeah.
And the freshness that he had once upon a time just feels gone to me. But like if Liv are looking at a new generation of commentators and observers like Ollie Wilson, then I think it's really, really good.
I think the fact that
Yeah,
you had two heavyweights going at it really, made it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dave, you obviously watched the full show, did you?
I watched the
He kept
highlights.
texting me really early in the morning. What time does Liv start at? What time does Liv
Yeah,
start at?
then I was texting him after every shot.
Yeah.
Now, look, the shot that DeChambeau hit into the playoff hole was incredible. Like,
Yeah.
it's a spectacular golf shot, full 3-wood. He's hit it over 300 yards. Were they playing at altitude? Were they in the high veld? Might have helped with the distance he's striking the ball, but and the huge crowds, and we saw it with Anthony Kim's win in Adelaide. Just these massive crowds give it such a big tournament feel. And there have been times this season in particular, but it's happened in the past as well, where the LIV Golf event that's playing opposite the PGA Tour event that week is so much more of a bigger event. And that
Yeah.
was the case with the Valspar this week. So LIV have had a little bit of luck a couple of times in that on those weeks where the 1/3 they have across the PGA Tour, they are getting the full LIV Golf feel. And if you look at their last 4 winners, Elvis Smiley won the first event of the year. I have no idea who he is, an Australian lad. But the next 4 have been Kim, Ram, and then back-to-back wins for Bryson. Like, that is dreamland stuff for
Yeah.
LIV Golf. And they're the 2 biggest names they have in it, Ram and Bryson. They've won the last 3 events between them. They're the only really 2 golfers outside of a huge backstory like the one Kim provided that you would actually sit down and watch. But I have to hand it to them. Like, when I watched the 4 South Africans make their way onto the 18th green on the last day, it looked like a major. And the fairway was filled with people.
Yeah.
The stands were filled. There was huge noise. And I've seen 2 of the golfers. Bryson was in tears afterwards, and he was asked why. And apparently, there's been some things that have gone on in his personal life in the last week that he didn't want to speak publicly about. But he alluded to that as one of the main reasons he became so emotional with this win. And I saw Paul Casey been interviewed after his round, and he was in tears, bawling about how amazing an event it was. And he says this is going to upset people in Australia where the LIV Golf event is so amazing, but I'm sorry, LIV South Africa is the best event we have on this tour. And I, I was just wondering what was going on with Casey that had him in so teary-eyed, but there was a huge, really big tournament event feel to it. And, sometimes you just have to swallow the lump in your throat and just say, like, they got it right in this tournament. They definitely got it right.
I thought another aspect, and you mentioned it, Dave, Gary, I thought the idea that the Southern Guards, which is the South African team, they were just beaten by 1 in the team event. Now, ordinarily with LIV, the team stuff, I'm just like, whatever. I'm conditioned to just look at individual stroke play events. But it was in front of a South African crowd that were clearly partisan and cheering for their guys. And I thought it added a nice aspect to it. Like, again, I was talking to a friend about it this morning, and he likened it. It was like it was a much better version of the President's Cup, and I know exactly what he means. And so it's just that nice confluence that a South African team performed very, very well in South Africa and adds another element to the aforementioned two heavyweights going at it. And so for me, it made for a much more compelling tournament than Valspar.
I would disagree because I've watched Valspar a lot. It's one of my favorite events on the tour because I know the course. It's a
Yeah,
really difficult game of golf, and I think the guy that wins that every year has to do something extraordinary coming down the stretch to stick his head above everybody else. I'm a little biased. It's a bit like when I watch Hong Kong. I know that course very well, and you can understand the difficulty of all the shots they have coming in. So
sure.
I'd probably be a little more swayed on Valspar. I thought the thing with South Africa was the golf course was too easy. Two guys and like there was, I don't know, what is there? There's 56 lads playing, and there was only, I think, 13 guys in single figures under par. So it's a
Yeah,
pretty easy game of golf. Is it? But I really do find, not that I have an allegiance to any team. I do understand the drama of the team golf the final day. Like it's way more pressure. The Aussies won in Adelaide, which kind of got lost a bit in translation because of the Anthony Kim story.
It's
But
true.
there was,
Good point.
there
Yeah.
was huge hoo-ha for the locals, as there was yesterday in South Africa. And all the South African lads they're good lads. They're pretty, Louis is one of the greats. Brandon Grace has, been through the ringer in and out with his game. Charles is a bit of a legend down there. So they're well respected and they're much loved. And the team golf thing in stroke play, like we all really enjoyed the Dunhill back in the day when it was a team event and it was stroke play.
Yeah.
So I think the team, whilst I thought Jeff Shackelford, his commentary was great. He called them the South African, the security guards, but which was pretty funny. But the team event, it's certainly more nerve-wracking than individual play. But I was just a bit disappointed with the course. I thought the course for the standard of golf, like they're all incredibly good. Whether you agree with Liv or not, the standard of golf on it is astonishing. So the 26 under, I thought was a little. I thought 11 under was an amazing total around Valspar, probably better than 26 under. So, but it was exciting, and it's like any event. Once you have a lot of people there, and golf can be an exciting live sport, but the people make it, and they were probably giving out free grog as well and whatnot, judging
Well,
by
did you see the
the
scrap?
aggro.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Did you see that, Dave?
Listen, I
No.
know. Give a
There was a
monkey a
full punch
microphone,
up caught on camera between like a bunch of beard up fans. Yeah, like including, I think might have been a layout punch, a proper layout punch. Like I think it actually knocked a guy out. Sorry, I'm not delighting in violence, but at the same time, is like, Jesus Christ, you're watching like just beard up fans, have a disagreement, and then one guy just absolutely floors a fella with a punch.
Yeah, but look, you could see that everywhere in any sport really that you go to.
Ah,
You,
yeah,
you see it
sure,
at
sure.
racing, and we obviously seen it in the stands at soccer matches. It's unusual for golf, obviously, but look where alcohol goes. Unfortunately, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often at US PGA Tour or major golf championship events in the States, where like New York, where like Bethpage, for example, where they do get on the beer fairly early and become increasingly aggressive and confrontational as the day goes on. We don't see stuff like this more often, but I'm looking at the video now and it's a pretty hard watch. There's a lot of them involved as well.
Yeah, yeah. There's quite the melee. I mean, look, and then I tell you what's interesting is that so Scotty Scheffler won the Amex on 29 under, okay, on a Pete Dye course. And like you, Gary, because it's one of the very few courses in America that's on the tour that I know personally and really like. Um, but this is a course they played it the first year in whatever year it was, and then the pros wouldn't play it for 25 years because they thought it was too difficult. And now Scotty Scheffler is winning at 29 under. Like, like that's just madness to me.
There was a great comment during the week, Fionn, about the driver distance.
Oh, sorry. Can we about Bryson DeChambeau's insane thing that the drivers haven't changed since 2009?
Yeah, but I'm not sure they've changed that much. I really don't think so. But one thing has changed enormously is how much stronger and fitter and faster the players are.
Sorry,
That even,
that's the gist of Bryson's argument, right? That
but
it's
I
more.
I think there's a lot of merit to it, Phil.
So how come nobody's playing with 2009 drivers?
Well, because they're not contracted. But no, I
Or
hear you.
why did Bryson in
I'm
2022 talk about his driver and say, I can hit it off the toe, I can hit it off the heel, I can hit it off anywhere, and it still goes miles? He was talking about a
well, there's no
specific.
denying. I know, but the reality for these guys, they're hitting the ball out of the middle of the club face way more often. But
Sure.
I am, as a curiosity piece, I'm gonna go out and get some old drivers. I'm gonna go on Trackman and see what the numbers actually are.
Actually,
Now
I would be
the
very
problem
interested.
with it is the problem with it is you can get a 12-year-old driver. You're looking at a 12-year-old shaft as well. So you have to put that into context too. But I'm going to try get 5 or 6 drivers and go out and test them and
Hmm.
see. Now, I use the driver I have. I've been using it for 2 years now. It's the last Titleist model, and it is an incredible driver. But I really do think that the players are just so much stronger and fitter now. And I think with that, even like I played here last Wednesday with two guys from Castle Golf Club, two senior cup players, two young fellas, like late 20s, and the distance they hit the ball was just frightening.
Yeah.
Now I know I'm 20 odd years older than them, but I still drive it pretty good, but they're giving me 20, 25 yards. Um,
Well, you and I,
and
Gary,
what that is,
we played with Dave Howard down in Castlemartyr last year, who won the West of Ireland. And Dave's a regular looking fella. He's a young lad. But Jesus Christ, there's a guy who's just flying at 300 yards like he was just, pouring milk into
I
coffee.
know, but the game has changed because when I was in late teens, we were playing with the Balada golf ball. You couldn't stand up and put the fastest swing possible on it because I think it just goes sideways.
Yeah.
So the ball has changed so much. Kids coming out now, they're learning. If you can put a lot of speed into your driver now, and the ball is not going to misfire like it once did. So they have learned to play the game. Like there's a kid here in the K Club, Michael Hunter, who is in university and he works in K Golf, and like he's cruising at 125, 127 club head speed. Now he's young and fit and strong, no different to, but they grab the club and they swing it as fast as they can. We weren't taught how to play the game that way. So that the psyche has changed, and then they want to get stronger and fitter. And I think whilst the clubs, there's no doubt they're better, they're more forgiving. But I'm not having it that a club today hits the ball 30 yards further than it did 10 years ago. I think the
Well, I
person
guess
holding
that
on to it has.
and I'm using the word advisedly, given the violence with which they hit, like once upon a time, my point is that the argument I would make is that the driver faces are so much more forgiving, which allows for you to go at it full pelt. Whereas once upon a time, the premium was on, you had to come down in the right plane, you had to hit the ball out the middle. And if you didn't hit it out the middle of the screws, you were going to be more punished than you are today. That would be
But
the argument.
and the golf ball as well, Fionn. The
And
golf
sure,
ball
and the golf ball has changed, and it's
is way more stable. It
yeah,
doesn't spin anything.
that's true.
You know, if Bryson was going at it with a Balada golf ball and not getting out of the center of the face, he'd hit it all over
Yeah.
the place. The
Right.
golf ball
Listen,
is a huge thing as well.
in the few minutes we have left, I did want to mention Porter Carrington. Now, because I'm a lunatic, I was following this on the PGA app last night
Me
because
too.
I wasn't seeing it. So I'm going on in the Cologuard Classic, okay, in Tucson. Harrington, I'm looking at Harrington, who is playing with Stephen Alker, and Harrington is one behind Stephen Alker. He's got a one-shot lead standing on the 18th tee. Harrington does. Goes along with his approach, ends up bogeying the hole. And I was just like, oh no, because it was like I was texting the lads in the group and I was like, oh my God, Harrington's going to win. Harrington's going to win. And before you know it, makes bogey on 18, goes on to a playoff. Alker makes birdie, and, good night and good luck. So, Borwick Harrington, a second place finish rather than anything else. But, so, slightly disappointing for Porrick. The other one I wanted to mention before I talk about Euan Murray, the commentator rather than the Guardian golf journalist, who has announced his retirement. I wanted to just mention John Ram. So he's dropped his appeal but he is still refusing to pay the fines, and he said he won't pay the fines, blah 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 blah. The European Tour, they want him to play 6 events. He goes, look, if I could play 4, it'd be fine. So basically, his Ryder Cup place is increasingly in jeopardy here. Now, I know we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but it feels like the lady is not for turning, as they used to say about Margaret Thatcher. But John Ram is not for turning. He's not budging.
Well, they probably need to call us bluff now, don't they?
Yeah.
Sorry, Dave, go on.
They need to call us bluff. If he's not returning, well then, is he willing to miss a Ryder Cup because of it? And let's see where
Yes, he is.
Let's see where he stands on it going up towards captain's picks or whatever might be required next year.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, look, look, I'd hate to see John Ram not at the Ryder Cup, but it looks increasingly likely if he doesn't play the events this year, he's just not eligible. Right, okay, I'm just conscious that time is against us here. So anyway, longtime Sky announcer Euan Murray has announced his retirement. Dave, I'll get your thoughts on Euan in a second, but he appeared on the Sliced podcast last week and didn't hold back about the behavior of the Americans at Bethpage, or the American fans. So let me know if you can hear this.
On the Saturday, I had 2 hours off after the off in the afternoon. And because I don't hear it tremendously well, I thought I'll go out to the 9th, 10th, and 11th, which were in a little circle and quite close to the television village. I heard stuff in that half hour I was there that I can't repeat to you. It's that bad. I'm not fired at Rory, but at Rory's family. And I walked back and I thought, do you really need part of this anymore? And that's when I decided to finish commentary. By the time I got on the plane on the Monday, I looked out over New York and thought it's been a fantastic journey. But if that's our future, I really don't want any part of it. I also feel that if the woman is swearing behind the cheek, shouting at Rory in a horrible manner, if Keegan Bradley, who came and supported it and waved his hands and get the crowd to get louder, if he'd spent as much time looking at his parents, Keegan Bradley may well have been a winning Ryder Cup captain. I think they spent way too much energy on something that's disgusting and really had no place in our game.
So that was Euan Murray speaking on the Sliced podcast. Now, I've edited that slightly just for length because he talks a bit in the middle of that piece, but I haven't changed any of his words. So the two things that I was interested in is one is that the abuse of Rory's family and the general abuse shouted at the European players prompted Euan's decision to retire. And then this remarkable drive-by on Keegan Bradley and the woman who was Heather McMahon. She's a comedian and she had been hired on day one. Now, it is worth pointing out that they realized they'd misfired really, really badly. She wasn't used again, and then she had to apologize for, what did she say? F Rory McIlroy. That was the gist of what
Yeah.
she was saying. Anyway, first of all, Dave, Euan Murray's 71. He's been the voice of golf for a very long time on Sky. Like, for me, he's synonymous with Sky's sporting coverage, very much in the mold of Alex Hay, Peter Allis, which are obviously golfing commentators that take me back to my childhood. Like, I'm surprised to hear that it was the poor behavior of fans in a fairly kind of fiery event that would have said to him, is like, okay, that's it. I'm done. I don't want to be part of that anymore.
Yeah, I just wonder if he's articulated his reasons for retiring properly there, and that I'm sure this might have been a contributing factor, but that maybe he's, at the age of 71, his job obviously means that he spends an awful lot of time away from family and friends and on the road and staying in hotel rooms. And as someone who, not so much in the last few years, but certainly in the last decade and around about the time my two children were born, I spent an awful lot of time on the road and a lot of time in the UK and a lot of time in Europe. And it's really hard, and it's not anywhere near as glamorous as people outside of the industry might consider it to be. And I would imagine that at his age, he's probably tired of the grind. And Sky probably don't go to as many events now as they would have done in the past, maybe 15, 20 years ago, but they're still on the road a lot with Ryder Cups and major championships and World Golf Championships and maybe the odd signature event. And obviously they do a lot of DP World Tour stuff as well. So that was probably grinding on him. And at his age, he was coming close to pulling the plug on it anyway. I'd say he has feelings on the schism in golf between LIV Golf and the PGA Tour as well, and the best players not always playing in the same events. I would sure he's a traditionalist as well, and is probably turned off a little. I'm putting words in his mouth. Obviously, this is pure speculation on my part. Someone who feels that the money gouging and the constant talk of how much somebody's earned and the prize money and the checks and the demands that players have made in that regard doesn't sit easy with him either. And this was maybe just the straw that broke the camel's back. And why am I covering events where these sort of people are being allowed go out there front and center? Because the one involving that comedian, that's a one-off event that will never happen again. They effed up massively there. I mean, it was absolutely ludicrous that they allowed that happen. Yeah. Excoriating Keegan Bradley, well, like, he doesn't need anybody to call him out on some of his behaviors over the course of that Ryder Cup week. Like, he embarrassed himself enough times, least of all when he sees Air Force One flying overhead and says, this is going to herald a turn around in our 40s because the president just flown over the golf course. Shut up, you're all mental. Idiot.
Yeah.
You absolute tool. So I'd say there's a lot of combination of factors involved here, but he has had a great innings and he's been very good at what he has done for a long time. And as you say, Fionn, so many of golf's big moments now are synonymous with his voice.
As someone who practices the very craft that Euan Murray has become famous for, what do you think made him as good at it as he was?
It's hard to tell because golf commentary is so much more difficult, as Gary can attest to, in that you can't ever really get caught up in what's happening because there's such a slower pace to it. It's more sedate. So if I might lose my mind over, a huge goal or a massive moment or a Johnny Sexton drop goal or something, even if you think of Jim Nance's iconic commentary of, a return to glory, that's said in a fairly calm manner. Even the guy who's telling us, in your life, have you ever seen anything like that? As the ball drops on the 16th for Tiger, it's still not at the pitch of a football or rugby commentator or a Gaelic football or hurling commentator where someone sticks a ball into the top corner in this unbelievably dramatic moment. The key for a golfer commentator for me is you find the right words at the right time and you deliver them in the right tone. Yeah. And he was very rarely found wanting in that regard.
Gary, as someone who has commentated on golf, where does Euan Murray Like, I mean, I presume you've worked with him in the past, have you?
I have done, yeah. I've been fortunate enough to do not a lot, but I've done probably 6 or 7 live broadcasts with them. My first ever live gig with Sky was with Euan, and he was how could I describe him? He was unbelievably generous to work with. He basically, because obviously I would have been a color commentator and he was the lead. So he was very good in framing what he was going to do and what his role was and what your role was, which in itself is brilliant because he didn't like the lines to get crossed either, but he did present what the lines were. So if you crossed them, well, then listen, you're getting your bum smacked, and that's fine. But he was very generous, and I do remember the first week I worked with him, he reached out to me afterwards to help, which was great. And then from a viewer point of view, I just love listening to him because he only ever added to the pictures,
Mm.
which is what his job was. And I think he's miles ahead. Andrew Coulthard's coming in to replace him probably. Nick Doherty does a dual role of presenting and a bit of lead. And I still think, and probably as you referenced earlier, Fionn, I'm kind of still of the Alexei Peter
Oh,
Alice,
yeah. Yeah.
loving that style of commentary. I think the commentary in golf has changed enormously as they're trying to sex it up and stat it up. But a lot of that is because they don't have the delivery points that someone like Euan Murray has had throughout his career. And he's just an easy listen. And I think that's what a lot of golf commentary kind of should be.
Mm.
And he'll be irreplaceable and sorely missed. And to be fair to him, you can kind of understand his point where, he grew up in Scotland. He grew up listening to the BBC and that style of, what was it, Henry Longhurst, that style of commentary. So that's the way he's sold and done his career, and he would have had deep love of the etiquette and integrity of the sport. And
I think his
he's gone
father
out
was
there
president of the Scottish PGA. Like, he has
but
real pedigree.
he's gone out there for 2 hours at the biggest event that he'll ever cover, and he's just seen it. It's like a bloody,
Yeah.
football game, and that was probably it for him.
I mean, look, he is unapologetically rooted in the traditions of golf. And, whereas Nick Doherty kind of, like, for me always is that, like, Nick Doherty's weak point is Rory McIlroy. He just can't talk about Rory in any objective sense. And Euan Murray would always refer to, Dame Laura and Sir Nick, and it was all very of a time, and as you said, like, I'm imagining that Sky are reading the tea leaves and going, look, we need to sex this up a lot. We need younger, we need it to be kind of just snappier, and maybe Euan Murray's going, look, I'm increasingly the stegosaurus of this piece, like, and
I know there's no doubt that they've been, probably trying to move him on for some time.
Yeah.
But I do think, and Peter Alice did say this to me, when you're you're either a former player or you're a commentator.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a lot of pally-pally. But the problem, if you're not pally-pally, you're not going to get, the angle either. So it's a tricky bridge to cross as well. But you got to call it as it is. I remember even that first broadcast it was in Ford Island, and Rory McIlroy hit an atrocious wedge shot on the 16th, long left over the green. And I just said, like, that's just an awful shot. And a couple of the commentators were saying to me, you can't really say that. Well, why can't I? Like, you're there to give your opinion. So,
and what was their reasoning for why you can't say that?
Well, because you can't really criticize Rory. And this was kind of before Rory was the Rory that he is now. But
yeah,
like, I would be probably Rory McIlroy's biggest fan or Shane
you
Lowry's
are
biggest fan. But you're not you're not their mate in commentary. You got to call it as it is. And we've all hit bad shots, and I probably understand it more than most because I've certainly hit more than Rory has. But you have a ball well above your feet and you're trying to beat a wedge to a back left flag. You just can't miss that left. So that's a terrible shot. He's not trying to hit it. There's no one trying to hit a bad shot. And I think that's where, my first event with Peter Allis, and that's what Peter said to me, you got to call it as it is. It's not a cheerleading competition, and there's an unmerciful amount of cheerleading going on. And I don't think it adds to the broadcast.
Ironically, I think Euan Murray was very, very good at politely calling a bad shot when a bad shot was hit.
Well, it's the control of the English language. You either have it or you don't. And I think he will, even when Rory won last year and he did a Jim Nance on it. Now, I know Jim Nance has gotten a lot of credit for it when Tiger won in 19 and the producer was in his ear going, shut your mouth, let the pictures do the talking. But I think Euan knew that moment anyway, and he knew that we were, and Wayne Riley has put this beautifully as well when I first started doing it. And Wayne would always say, you're talking to the guy on the couch watching the golf. And I do think Murray was as good at that as anyone. You did feel he was chatting to you as you were watching the golf.
Dave, he always, I mean, it's an obvious thing perhaps to say, but he always struck me. He bore it with great dignity. He made sure to kind of constantly leverage the dignity of the game. And I would imagine listening to those, like, he seems so upset and annoyed by what happened at Bethpage. And I don't think he's acting. And it's and his criticism of Keegan Bradley for me seems more rooted in that Keegan Bradley is behaving in an undignified manner by amping up the crowd to boo, Rory. Whereas, and I think that's the thing that ultimately is like, Jesus Christ, I've been in this game for, 50 plus years. I have to see this happen. Like, no, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I go back to my point that he would have seen that at Kew Island in 91.
True.
And he would have seen it in Brookline in 99. And the 2004 Ryder Cup, was it Oak Hill or that was 95? Oakland Hills, 2004 when Langer was the captain. Some dog's abuse given to the European players. So I'm not sure how, maybe Bethpage was the worst of it in terms of some of the vile stuff that was said, but like Euan Murray's no shrinking violet. He would have seen an awful lot of this stuff down through the years, which is why I don't think this was the out and out reason for his decision now. I think it's a combination of a lot of things, and this was maybe just
it could be confirmation of a decision already made.
Perhaps, yes.
Yeah. And
yes.
Look,
like I think that he has never been afraid to call out poor behavior. Like there's been a few times over the years where he has gone as far as to say that, to brand something as disgusting on the air. Like when poor Keegan Bradley's getting an awful doing here. But do you remember the time when Keegan Bradley was constantly spitting?
Yeah.
And Euan Murray called him out on that. When Garcia spat into the hole after a putt, Euan Murray went through him.
That's right.
He's had opportunities to stick the boot in the past, justifiably so, and he's done it. Yeah. So I don't think he's ever really held back. Look,
I love Euan Murray. I always loved his presence. But like when you look at the new generation of presenters, Nick Doherty, clearly one of them. It feels like increasingly that his central role has been, I guess, slowly but respectfully marginalized over the last couple of years. And look, he's calling it a day. I think we'll miss him. I don't think we'll see. I know this sounds, oh God, I could say, we not see the likes of him again. I don't think. I just think the way sport is gone is just different now.
I don't think ever. I think the way, in LIV, if you think of LIV as it's a new product, and they've totally transformed how they're trying to broadcast the sport. I don't think there's any going back, and I don't necessarily think it's a good thing either.
Yeah, no, look, ultimately, I in my mind, golf is still a pastoral pastime where you want like the strains of Walt Whitman, wafting over like that. That's like in my head. I'm like, that's what I think golf is. But
it's true. It's like snooker. It's like snooker commentary too. Golf is a relaxing sport. It's not every Sunday night that you've Rory McIlroy winning, like he did at Augusta. It's normally a quite relaxed experience watching. Now, there's a bit of excitement when a guy holds a putt, but
anyway, rightio. Look, gents, we're going to leave it there. Dave, as always, thank you very much. Gary, as always, thank you very much. I think we'll have our preview pod for Augusta next week. We'll have one of 2 preview pods. We'll get going. We'll
can we have a special feature for that?
Yeah. What you mean?
We could get Dave to wear John Rahm's jacket there that he had on for his announcement on LIV. That'd spice things up.
Very good.
I'm always open to free merchandising.
Yeah.
Not quite sure LIV Golf merchandise is something I would wear, but look, we could talk about that. Yes, any opportunity, Fionn, to discuss the Masters is one that I will embrace.
We'll look forward to it. Rightio. Well, look, the Rhine line coming at you this Thursday. Again, questions in the Discord channel or at golfweekly@offtheball.com. Lads, we'll talk to you again. See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.